So today I'm going to start explaining how temperature charting works in a really simple, clear, easy to understand way so that you know what your body is doing and why it works, and to how to use this system calmly without getting obsessed or overwhelmed with all the data. I'm going to explain this from both a Western medical perspective and also a traditional Chinese medicine perspective, so you can see the full picture. So if you've been tracking your cycle using ovulation tests, watching your app and still feeling unsure of when you actually ovulate, then this video is for you. So I want to start by saying really clearly that most women that I work with in my acupuncture clinic, including very highly educated, very capable women, have never been taught actually how ovulation works. And in fact, I've treated several GPs here who've still not been 100% sure when they get here of how to manage it. So we're taught how to not get pregnant in a lot of detail, but we're never really taught how to understand our cycle when we're trying to conceive. So if you're feeling confused or anxious or unsure, this is not your personal failure, it's a gap in the education that we've been given. So let's start with the Western medicine explanation. Like, what is temperature charting? Well, temperature charting is one of the most accurate and cheapest ways to confirm your ovulation. What we're actually measuring is your basal body temperature, which is your resting temperature, usually first thing in the morning before you move or speak or check your Instagram. So how does this work? Well, after ovulation, your body releases a hormone called progesterone. And progesterone is what we sometimes call the warm hormone. And when it's produced, it causes your body temperature to rise by about 0.5 of a degree, usually just after you've ovulated. So when we see that temperature rise, we know that ovulation has already happened. And you can see what that looks like on this little chart here. So if this is already sounding like new information to you and things are starting to feel a little bit clearer, please give this video a little like and subscribe to the channel, because fertility is a really tricky topic, and liking this video actually helps other women who are struggling to find it too. And I share videos every week helping you to understand your cycle and fertility in a really calm, confident way. So the important thing also is that on YouTube, when you like or subscribe something, it's pretty anonymous, not like Instagram or Facebook. So if this is still a secret topic for you, like it was for me when I was trying to get pregnant, you can actually help women to find this information and still be anonymous. Just click the like and the subscribe button. So from a traditional Chinese medicine perspective, this temperature rise reflects a really strong kidney yang energy and healthy blood and qi flow after ovulation. So in simple terms, your body has enough warmth and energy to support that implantation process. So if you're temperature charting and your temperatures are slow to rise, it's a gradual swoop, or they drop quickly afterwards, this can tell us that the body's under some distress. Either it's too stressed, it has low progesterone, or it's struggling to hold on to that progesterone. So this information is so important. So one of the biggest problems I see in my clinic is women just relying on the app or an ovulation stick test to confirm ovulation. But what they're actually doing is predicting your ovulation. They're not confirming that it's happened. And quite often with ovulation sticks, you're not getting an accurate reading either. So if you have any kind of hormonal irregularity, autoimmune diseases, hormonal fluctuations, polycystic ovaries, you might not be getting a good reading off those sticks. In fact, they can cause an awful lot of stress because it never confirms the ovulation's happened, or you're in high fertility for ages, or it just never shows up. So that causes a lot of stress in the clinic. And so I much prefer people to use temperature charting because it gives us a whole picture of your cycle across the month. Now, temperature charting doesn't predict your ovulation. It actually shows you when it happened and what happens afterwards. So a lot of the women I see in my clinic like to control everything, and this is a very out of control situation. When you're struggling to conceive, it can probably be the first time you've not been able to control and manage the situation in order to get the result that you want. So temperature charting just gives you back a little bit of reassurance about what's happening in your cycle. And actually, even though you're monitoring it every day, it can give you a feeling of being more calm about it because you can see across the chart everything's fine. And it gives you more data than just peeing on a stick or what the app algorithm is telling you. This is about listening to your body and then responding accordingly to the information that we get. Because of course, your cycle will change. You're not a robot. You're not going to ovulate on the same day every month. In reality, it will change because of stress issues, sleep issues. If you get on a plane, it can be changed. So this is a way of seeing, oh, that's when my ovulation happened. Therefore, I know when my period is due, and have I got a good length of my cycle in between those 2 points? Okay, so this is how you do it. It's really simple and it shouldn't cost you a lot of money. All you need is a basic digital thermometer. Nothing that's going to cost you a lot of money at all. And all you need is it to have 2 decimal points. So whatever your reading is, 36 point, you need something like 36.24. So you're going to keep your thermometer on top of your phone, probably by the side of your bed. And the first thing you do when you open your eyes in the morning is take that thermometer, pop it under your tongue or under your armpit, whatever you want to do, and record that temperature. Plot it in your app. There's probably a space for it. Or back when I was trying to get pregnant, we would use graph paper. It doesn't matter which system you use as long as we're doing the same thing every day. Now, to get an accurate temperature reading, you need 3 hours of solid sleep before you take that temperature. And we do it every day. It doesn't matter when you start. It doesn't matter if you miss a day or two. If you're poorly, the temperature will be higher. Doesn't matter, just bung it on the chart and just make a little note of it. It doesn't have to be perfect. What we're looking for is a guide. Now, the only time we have a challenge temperature charting is if your sleep is disrupted. And that can affect a lot of people who work shifts or erratic kind of sleep times. If you've got a toddler who's up in the night, a husband that's snoring, a dog that's on the bed shuffling around, that's going to disrupt your sleep and therefore it's not going to give you an accurate resting temperature. So there are workarounds with this. There's a device called an Ovusense or the Ring health monitors, the ones that look gorgeous. They're pretty good. Ultrahuman do a really nice one. The algorithm on that is fantastic. People were coming to my clinic with the Aura Ring. That's also very good. What I would suggest you avoid is using like an Apple Watch, like something on your wrist to take temperature. They don't seem to be very accurate at all. So don't use those. Digital thermometer is best. Second choice is the finger ring trackers. So, first thing you do, you open your eyes, you take your temperature, you make a record, and then we leave it be. And we keep taking that temperature every day, the whole day of your cycle, for about 3 months. And what we're looking for is to get a couple of graphs which just show us what is happening with your temperature over the month. And what you'll see, I'll put a little chart here, is that the temperature before your ovulation is quite low, and then as you ovulate it jumps up, and then the temperature stays high. Now in reality, it'll bobble along at the bottom, there'll be some random freak ones, and then it'll jump up, and then it'll stay high, again, bobbling along sometimes because you're a human being, you're not a robot, it's not going to be a straight line. And then as your period comes, it will drop back down again, and then it has your base temperatures. And what that shows us is when does your ovulation happen in the month? When is that jump in temperature of plus 0.5 degrees? And then what happens afterwards? Now, what that temperature is actually tracking is that progesterone level. Low progesterone before you ovulate, bump, it jumps up, your body produces progesterone once you've ovulated, and then your temperature stays high. Now, there are some anomalies with these graphs as well, and so I'm just going to go through those just in case you're looking at it going, mine doesn't look like that. Now, in some of the ladies I see, they've been tracking their ovulation through an app, sometimes pin on a stick. And as I mentioned, the app is predicting based on a mathematical calculation. So like, bin off that, that's not going to be accurate. The pin on a stick ovulation tests are tracking a hormone called the luteinizing hormone, the LH. It's tracking a surge of the LH that happens just before you ovulate. But for some women, that can be almost immediately the ovulation happens, 24 hours, 36 hours, sometimes even later. And what I often see is that when we track temperature, we can see the ovulation is happening at a slightly different time to that LH surge. So if you've been using that stick as gospel as to when you ovulate and having sex at that time, you may have been missing this ovulation window, sometimes by up to 3 or 4 days, which can be frustrating if you've been trying for a number of months. So having this temperature chart gives you a lot more information than just the sticks. So I mentioned before looking at these charts to see if there's an issue, because of course there's no point tracking an ovulation unless there's something you're going to do with the information that you get. So if you're lucky and your chart is beautiful and you have 14 days of the low temperature, ovulation, 14 days of the high temperature, and then a period comes, that is gold standard. That is what this looks like. In a lot of the ladies I see, their ovulation is later than that. So they think they've been ovulating on day 14, but actually when we track the temperature, we can see it's later, 16, 17, 20, day 23 even. And then they're still getting a period on day 28, and that's a real issue. That is what we call a luteal phase defect, or in my world, we'd call that a yang issue, because that second phase of your cycle is the yang phase. So what do we really want is the number of days between ovulation happening and your period coming is 14 days. Now we can get away with about a minimum of 11 days. That would be the cutoff for your body being able to sustain a pregnancy at that point. In fact, if you're having a lot of chemical miscarriages, a chemical pregnancy, which is where you test positive for pregnancy and then your period comes, the chances are this is the issue. You're not having enough time in that second phase to create enough progesterone and hold on to the pregnancy. So when you temperature chart, if you're looking going, oof, my chart looks like this, the second phase is too small, then things we can do in that second phase to help you. And sometimes all you need is just to look at that, put things in place, and then we get that solved. So if your chart looks like this one, where the temperatures are pretty steady and go on and on and on for longer than 28 days, and you don't see any jump in the temperature, that is a cycle where you have not ovulated, or you've been taking your temperatures wrong. So if that's the case, then I would suggest you go to your GP and ask for some blood tests, because it's possible that you're not ovulating. And of course, we need that to get pregnant. And then the other kind of chart I want to show you, this one here, is where the temperatures are quite low. So most women bob along at about 36 point something temperatures. If your temperatures are in the low 35s, don't worry, doesn't mean you're hypothermic. It often means that you could have polycystic ovaries. So I tend to see those women have a very low temperature, and then their ovulation can be much later on in the cycle. It takes the body a long time to get to ovulation. And so we would work on that yin phase, the follicular phase of your cycle to really support the body, to build the yin, which can then transform into the yang, and that's when ovulation happens. So in my traditional Chinese acupuncture clinic, the first thing I always ask is to understand somebody's temperature charts, and then we can make a plan to support the body to ovulate at the right time and to have a good second phase of the cycle. And then, once we've got the cycle looking good and optimum for fertility, we can then start timing sex around that ovulation. And I would recommend every other day for maybe 5 days before your ovulation is due and a couple of days afterwards. We don't want to be doing it any more than that. So what do we do with this information? Okay, so now you've got your charts, you've been measuring it for a few months, you can see what's happening, and we're timing things right. Perfect. But what if the chart's not right? What if you have a short second phase, or your first phase, your yin phase, is too long? Then there are things we can do with acupuncture, diet, and lifestyle to try and resolve that. So if you want lots more information on this, because this is a pretty big topic, then I have lots of downloads that you can have for free, which gives you some more information. But I also have my online course, The Fertility Formula, which takes you through every step of this process in a really calm, organised way, giving you the confidence and reassurance in your body that it's going to be in a good place to receive a pregnancy, and you know exactly what you can do to support it. So then you don't need to be Googling all night long or putting your test results into ChatGPT and trying to find some kind of answer, because you're not the same as anybody else. You are completely unique. And when it comes to getting pregnant, there are 2 people involved. So that combination of 2 people means that your situation is not like anybody else's. So learning to understand what's happening for you and what you can do to improve your fertility, advice that is tailored just for you and not just what's worked for some random person in another country, is super important. So there's a link in my bio there, and I'll put it in the pinned comments so that you can take a look and see if that's something you want to investigate. Just because you're struggling to get pregnant does not mean that you are broken. There is nothing wrong with you. We just need to understand what's happening and put things in place so that you are in a great place physically, emotionally, mentally, to be on this journey and get pregnant in a calm way and sustain that pregnancy healthily. So just a reminder, if you think this has been helpful, please share it with somebody else who you know is also in a similar position. I'm sure they would find it useful, and it really helps other people to see this information too when they're struggling. Go and check out my other videos. I hope to see you soon.